Hi there, Aguniushla Korja. Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat, where this is our 41st, where I'm in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. So type in your name and let me know where you're from. Sorry about the mess up. I had actually thought I was live, and obviously I wasn't. So Keith from Canada, Vancouver, you say from a mercifully cooler day. It's great to hear your temperatures have gone down. And Stefan from Dartford and Staffordshire. Stephanie, hi. Lovely to see you again from Utah. And Sherry from New York. Hi, Zane from California. Julia from London. New Orleans. That's lovely. It's even lum on the Chudgrailga Ecole. Hi, Ricky and Ava from Belgium. And Sussex by the Sea. That's a Helen. It must be lovely there. And Yoss from Minnesota. Hi, John from Slough and Anne from London. You're all very, very welcome. And John King from the west coast of Scotland. And Debbie from Faversham. And hi, Gail from Washington. It's nice to see familiar names again. Hi, Red from Hampshire. Anyway, you're all very, very welcome. And let me introduce you to this evening's guest. And we go to Glastonbury to... let me welcome Valentina Bernardi, who actually is not English and she's Italian. So, ciao, Valentina, benvenuto.
Ciao.
So, you're very, very welcome to this Fireside Chat.
Thank you.
So, you're in Glastonbury. So, that makes me really, really curious. What brings you to Glastonbury? I don't know where you are from in Italy, but what brings you to Glastonbury?
Well, I'm originally from Rome. But I lived for the last 25 years in London, and well, I've never been a town, a city person, and sorry, it's very noisy. There is some background noise.
No.
Oh, now it's gone. Basically, I lived for 25 years in London before moving to Glastonbury, and it was a decision because I just had enough for London and I never been, a city dweller. And I wanted to go back to the countryside. I grew up in a farm on the seaside of Rome. And once I finished my studies, I didn't need to be in London near to university anymore. I decided to move to Glastonbury. Originally, I wanted to move to Scotland, to Edinburgh. But because I was still doing my PhD, it was a bit too far to go to Edinburgh for the logistic of going to see my PhD supervisor. And so I opted for Glastonbury. And it was funny because everyone thought they already lived in Glastonbury because I was always here. I basically was here every other month for weeks to end. And so I thought, well, if I can go to Edinburgh, then why not Glastonbury? So I moved here.
So you are an archaeologist. So is that one of the reasons you came to Glastonbury? So what kind of work were you doing?
No, I'm a human remains specialist, but I also used to work as a field archaeologist. I did work for two different commercial units. On one, I was working as a field archaeologist and human remains specialist. For the other one, I did mostly watching breed and field archaeology. But most of the sites, anyway, that we were doing, we were always on the southwest. And one of the units was in southwest, is in Swindon, in Wiltshire. And so when I moved, my job kind of was already here, so I didn't have to do much. But then, as I said, sorry, there is some sort of watery sounds?
No.
No? When I moved here during the pandemic, I lost my job as archaeologist. So now I got another job, which is completely different. And I'm working as an outreach support with adults with learning disability.
And so what kind of work is that? What kind of work do you do?
Well, my main job is to help them to have a normal life. So because they have learning disability, they may not be able to go out by themselves because it's not safe for themselves. And so I facilitate them to do pretty much anything they want to do. If they want to go out for a coffee with a friend, at the moment we can't go out with friends because of the pandemic, so we need to keep distance. But up to now, we can go up with 2 people, and carers don't count, so they can meet another friend. Or if they want to go to visit places, then by themselves they cannot go. So we've been to Stonehenge, we've been to Stourhead. We go often to the Avalon Marshes because many of the people I support there are from Glastonbury, and they
Okay.
really, yeah, and they really, really love the place. So sometimes we just go to walk in the Abbey, and then we go to a coffee shop of their choice, and we basically it's just like going out with a friend. Or when once they start again, if they want to go to swimming pool, if they want to go to clubs or to the cinema, then I'll just help them to do what they want to do to have as normal life as possible.
So so it sounds like you're getting paid to have a good time, really.
Very much so, yes.
You mentioned marshes there. I didn't.
The Avalon Marshes.
Avalon marshes. So what are they like, and where are they?
Well, next time you come to Glastonbury, I'll take you there. They are technically they are Eimear and Shepwick. They're about 4 miles from outside Glastonbury, and it's a mix of environments. Um, some are marshland, some are more like fen, and other are pit box and pit fields where there is pit extraction. They're all qualified as natural reserve, so they're all protected area, and there is very big variety of wildlife. We have storks, heron, egret, otter, kingfisher, marsh harrier, lapwing. I mean, there is all sorts of wildlife, and many of the people I support do really, really love that. So we often go just to see birds with binoculars. Um, yeah, it's a beautiful environment, and there is a lot of history in it. There is the Swift Track, which is a Neolithic pathway, and part of it is built on
Stills.
stilts. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's part of where the Lake Village was. It's a funny,
Oh,
yeah, because it's a funny thing. A lot of people that come to Glastonbury don't actually realize that there is a lot of history and archaeology on the place. Besides the mythology and the legends, there is actual real archaeology and very early Neolithic sites. So the Lake Village was also a kind of a crannog was built on stilts,
mm-hmm.
and there was a museum. It has now been closed for about 3 years, but there used to be a Lake Village museum here where the tribunal is on the High Street. It's now been moved to I think it's Shepton Mallet and or Taunton. But the switch track, the reconstruction is there. Of course, the switch track is being reburied, and there is part there is a zigzag kind of root plank that goes across the floor of the marshes, and part is actually still and is being reconstructed with a wall cover it.
Wow.
Yeah, the marshes have a lot of archaeology, a lot of history. At the Avalon Marshes Visitor Center, they have reconstructed a whole longhouse with a massive
Oh.
fire pit, a Viking boat, a Roman villa with proper oppidum, um, and they have also a roundhouse.
Okay, I must visit.
Yes, I think some people don't realize it because it's the out of Glastonbury, and the is not fantastically connected to you. There is, I think, a bus every half an hour, but it doesn't leave you anywhere close to the marshes. So then you need to make your own way there if you don't have a car.
Okay, I'm intrigued. You mentioned a bog, like a peat bog, and you mentioned a fen. So peat is acidic, and I come from the bog in the middle of Ireland, and that's very acidic. But I live in Kilkenny, where we have the fen, which is alkaline.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting that you have two of those what seem to be opposite environments in close proximity.
It is, and I was very surprised too because when I got my allotment here, I thought it would be very acid because it's all peat and peat extractions and things like that. And when I actually went to put a stage in the ground, it was clay, which is
Okay.
alkaline. And I did a acidity test, and it's actually super alkaline. And possibly I
Oh,
should make it more acid. Yeah. So it's very patchy, and if I'm not wrong, the parts towards Shepwick, that's where the fen are, and then there is the other part towards West A, that's more fixed. It seems to be split.
Well, I'm going to have to visit there because it's like it gets very little attention. When we're in Glastonbury, it's everything within the town itself. So when you're in Glastonbury, where's your favorite place within Glastonbury itself?
Our favorite place to do what generally?
I suppose as a sacred site.
I love sort of course. I know lots of people find it to be too spiky. I think that was the definition someone gave me as energy. But I love going up to town. I go up there nearly every day ever since I'm better. Yeah, I go there. I actually fell asleep once up there, and I was like, "How did you manage?" But I did.
During the day or nighttime?
It was at dusk. I went up and I was with my what do you call it, like a puffer coat. I had a very fluffy jacket. It was winter. It was November, and I had my super fluffy boots, and I was like totally wrapped up. Went there to see the sunset, and then I sat there like this and put my hoods up. And because there is a thing that I like to do. I do it in another place, where I just sit there and I just pretend to be a tree or a rock or something, like just be part of the environment. I don't do anything. I don't. I just stay there and just and I was doing that, just kind of becoming part of the landscape rather than looking at the landscape. And eventually I fell asleep. I fell asleep and I woke up and it was dark and I was like, oh my god, what happened? And then I have to go down with the torch on the phone because I couldn't see.
It's interesting becoming one with the landscape, not looking at it, but becoming one with the landscape. And then you go into another state of consciousness. Okay, in this case, sleep or whatever it was. Wow.
Yeah, it's a thing I like to do is like, I don't know how it came to me, but I remember having this thought. It was, I think, during one of my excavation, and I was there, and everyone was rushing around doing things, and I just stopped and realized, sorry, what if I? Oh yeah, that was. It was raining. It started raining, and everyone started, rain. Cover this, cover that, put all the waterproof gear because admittedly it's horrible when you work and you soft wet and you don't have your waterproof gear. But part of me thought, it's just water. Why? We are the bird were there, the sheep were grazing, no one moved, the trees are hanging there. And I thought, what it is with human that just like rain and we run like we usually have bath and we're friendly with water, but when it comes from the sky, the house is raining, everyone has to run somewhere for cover. And so I thought, what if I just stay here and do nothing? Okay, I'll get wet. So I started doing exactly that, and sometimes it's the same when it's wind. We kind of resist it and trying to go against it. And I'm like, what if I just pretend to be a tree? The tree doesn't bother; it just kind of swing when it's pushed to move. And so I just tried to think it, and I thought it was, I don't know, I like it. It makes me, yeah, in a sense, you kind of become part of the landscape, and you're just there, and the elements move you or get you wet or whatever, and you're just there, and then I don't know, there's just some sort of peace of surrender, or I like it.
It's beautiful. What brought you to OBOD? What brought you to Druidry?
Okay. It's a kind of long story, but I can make it short. So originally, I, of course, when I was in Italy, I had no idea about druids. I didn't know anything. But what happened is it was during my baccalaureate, which you mean when I was about 13, 14. We had these things at school that you had to read one book every 2 weeks, and then you had to do like an analysis who are the protagonists, what's the plot, blah blah blah. And of course, I hated all the books they were making me read, and they were all like War and Peace and Memoirs of an Italian or the Foucault, what's it called?
The pendulum.
Yeah, stuff that 14, 15 years old, you couldn't care less. And so I wasn't reading them, I was cheating, I was copying the analysis. And we have in Italy, there is a thing that's called Vignani, it's like a miniature book where you can find all the synthesis, and I was just copying it. So of course, my teacher, who now I would have realized she was what we would call a witch or pagan for sure, but at the time I had no idea. And my mother said, she's mostly peculiar, your literature professor. And she said to me, she called me one day and said, let's talk. I was like, oh, what did I know? And she said, I can notice you are not enjoying the books. And I was like, me never. I was like, what makes you think that? And she said, let's cut it short. I know you're copying the analysis. I know you're not reading them. We need to sort this out. And I was like, oh. So she proposed a deal. And she said, I'll give you a book because I went through your work. I did, as my baccalaureate, I did fine art, but I specialized in textile. And she said, I went through your work. I know you've been studying Celtic history, Celtic art, Celtic everything. So the proposal, I'll give you a book I think you will like. If you like that, 2 weeks you need to read the book I gave you from the curriculum. The other 2 weeks you can read the book I gave you if you like it. And I thought, well, it can't be worse than what it is reading every week. So I said, okay. And she gave me The Mist of Avalon.
Ah.
That was the book she gave me. And so there was, there was and I come back and say, yes, I like this book. I wanted more of this book. And so for 2 years, we went on ahead. So I read all from The Mist of Avalon, then I read all the other things about, King Arthur, the whole Arthurian lore and saga. Then there was the other one from Stephen Loward, which is actually called The Druids. But it was, all fantasy, and I didn't know druids actually existed still. And then, fast forward 15 years, they stayed a fantasy, and I tried to leave, and because they seems to have the same belief I had since childhood. But again, there was no outlet for it because I didn't know anything. Then, probably I would say about 20 years later, when I was already in London, and I co-founded the Red Tent with another 2 women in Richmond because there was no Red Tent at the time. And one of these ladies, she was a pagan. I think at the time she was into witchcraft. And she said, oh, it's Samhain, our Halloween, but it's our Samhain. There is this event in London organized by Pagan Future or part of the Pagan Federation. Do you want to go? And I said, okay. But then I spoke enough to her that I thought, she's much more into the things I like and the way I feel rather than the other lady on the Red Tent. They were more into New Age, think positive, you are what you think kind of thing, which worked for me up to a point. And so we went there. And when we went there, the main act was no other but Dave the Bard. And that was the first things I ever heard him. And I think it was the year when he launched Antler Crown and Standing Stone.
Yeah.
And so when I heard that song, I was like, oh my God, this man is literally putting words to the way I feel. And we bought the CD, of course, straight away. And then through him, listening to him, and then I started to listen to Druidcast. And then I thought, maybe I should inquire about OBOD. And then I got the introduction pack, and then, of course, I enjoyed it. So it's been a long story.
So when has Druidry supported you?
Well, in several occasions, I think the two that I can think of more, or the more obvious maybe, definitely when my nan passed away, or even while she was unwell. She, bless her, she lived up to 90, absolutely healthy. And then she choked on a piece of pizza. And she managed to cough it up with Emily manure, but part of the food is gone in her lung and caused pneumonia ab ingestis. And so she got very ill and she had to be in hospital. So I flew from here because I was working at the time. I could work from I was doing another job, and I could work from wherever I was because I'm doing research. So I
Yeah.
could. So I flew over Italy and I took care of her for a whole month while she was in hospital because the state of the hospital in Italy, they won't feed her. She will have to wait for someone to feed her when the food comes and stuff. So I was staying with her. And I think because I don't really know the link exactly, but I suppose that having studied Druidry and having formed, it definitely helped me to accept the circle of life, the certain parts of life are integral part. And I had a different. Sorry, this noise. I had a different view of what was, I mean, not a different view, but I had more acceptance. So what I knew it was coming. And also, of course, because I'm a human rights specialist, I study how the body, prepared for death and what happened. I could tell the sign that she was not going to live, even though the doctor keeps saying, oh, she's stable, and pump liquid on her. And of course, the liquid was just coming out from nowhere, but nowhere to ship her. But in a sense, there was a comfort that I had my beliefs kind of support me through that passage and to what was coming and what would have happened to her. So that was definitely very, very useful. And I remember I stayed there the whole month. And because the doctor keeps saying, oh, she's stable, she's fine. And then I had a ticket. I had to come back to London. I flew on the 27th afternoon. I flew back to London. I woke up very early on the 28th, and there was the most bizarre sunrise. But I remember waking up and seeing this very yellow, weird sunrise, and I said, "Oh, it looks like sunset." And I just had that feeling that it was at the end of something. And literally 10 minutes later, my mom called. And I remember having this thought. I thought, Nan, if you need to go, go. And sorry, I'm going to cry now. And 10 minutes later, my father actually called me, which was bad news because he never ever called. And I thought, yes. And he said, well, I just wanted to tell you that they called from the hospital. They said it's not a good news. And I thought, that's, what news is. I mean, the hospital doesn't call you to tell you the bad news when you already know the situation. So I was aware, and I don't think that they even realized until they went there and they'd be told that she passed away. She did. But again, I don't know.
At that point, they didn't know she had passed, but you did.
They would still, I think they would not accept it, but they must have worked it out. I can't think they did not realize. But I don't know. I think in that case, my spirituality, my belief helped me to leave the whole situation with a much more realistic perspective. And also, I don't know, I think with acceptance, with less, not grief, but in a different way. Acceptance, I think, would be the best word.
And also easier to let them go.
Yeah.
To wherever they need to go, to do the work they need to do, to continue their existence, however that is, rather than clinging to them here because of our weddedness to this world. Yeah. I mean, I love being here, but I'm also aware of there is another world where our loved ones go to, and what a gift to be able to let them go and to say, Nonna, if you need to go, go. It's so important because sometimes people need permission just because they're hanging on for those on this side who don't want to let them go. So it's a good thing to do.
It is, and I remember, for example, which I find very distressing, and I assume my mom did too. But my nan, who was an absolute rational to till the end, when she was in hospital, she started telling me, "Why is Uncle here? I can see Uncle. He doesn't talk to me, but he's in the corner of the house, of the room, smiling." And I was like, "Who's Uncle?" I mean, my grandmother had 21 brothers, so.
21 brothers. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, let's not even go into it. So I was like, which uncle, Grandma? But by the time she passed, she was ill. She was only her and my great uncle that was still alive. She was 90, he was 93.
Wow.
So I was like, whose uncle are you seeing? And she was, oh, Michele. And I thought, Michele died 10 years ago. But she kept saying she could see him. And I thought, I think this is a clear sign. And she also said that she was taken somewhere down. And when she came back, there was a dark bag on her bag. And she told the doctor, why is that dark bag? Why is that dead body on my bed? And I thought, oh, it's like she had a vision of what was going to happen. So I think to me they were clear signs. But when she talked to my mom was like, oh, it was just a dream. Don't you're not seeing anything. And I think she was getting even more stressed.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, in that way. And then I think during the pandemic also, during my shielding time and the whole pandemic, I think it's been quite a lot of support. Because he gave me lots of things to do while I was stuck at home. But also, again, it was a certain acceptance that things happen and there is a cycle and I don't know, the whole things, I think I took it, to use a very broad term, a bit more philosophical than many other did. And I could handle myself and what I was feeling quite, I don't know if it's pat on my own shoulder, but I think they all considered what my health situation was and everything else. I think I did fairly well, and I think a lot was to do because of my spirituality. And I had also lots of friends, which many are from OBOD as well, that call me every day, and I Skyped and chat with everyone. We did meditation ritual online. I asked my group if we could set it up online, and I set up them on Zoom and everything. So up to a few months ago, we did all our ritual and mood and everything on Zoom with my group.
That's beautiful. There's a message from Gabby here.
Oh.
Hello, Valentina. Thank you for sharing your very special knowing about when your Nana left this earth plane. For your intuitive connection to be able to let her go, being connected to nature and knowing the awareness of how important it is for them to go on to the next spiritual plane. It was very beautiful to hear and touched our hearts. That's so lovely, Gabby. Yes, I so get that. I so agree with that. Yes. So, is Druidry something you are or something you do?
For me, it's something you are. And then, of course, you do because you are. So, in a sense, everything you do, it's part of who you are. It's not necessarily that way for everyone. I understand some people do it more like as a practice. But for me, it's more who I am. And I think it kind of reflects in everything you do, the way you live. Not necessarily just the ritual or the dressing or the things, but it's just the way you live your life. Which, I try to.
So what would you say for people that not everybody is watching is a member of the order or is a druid? What would you say that in terms of how you live your life, that you would say this is how your druidry is reflected in the way you live your life? How would you see that, or how would you describe it?
Well, I think there's different levels. At a more basic level, which is not necessarily druidic, is just anyone that cares for the environment, but is a big part of druidry. It is, of course, trying to be as green as possible. It is trying to, not pollute, trying to do things that they are helping the environment, taking care of the environment, trying to tread as gentle as you can on the land, which sadly is not necessarily possible because, for example, for both work, my past and present, I need a car. I would have loved to, be able to have some sort of, I don't even know electric car because I'm not totally in agreement that they are any better because electricity still has to be created from somewhere, but maybe they are better than petrol, but I could not afford an electric car, so I still have a normal car. but I mean, from the choice of my energy supplier, I try to find an energy supplier that does 100% green energy, and I try to be careful in how much energy I consume, electricity, water, anything. And then, of course, there are other ways, I mean, maybe less obvious, but again, the way you relate to people, the way you treat people, the way you see justice, again, the way you maybe are able to accept, something that otherwise I may have found much more difficult. It's just in any kind of aspect of life. I try, well, again, this is not necessarily druidry, but for me, is part of it. I've been doing quite a lot of activism. Especially for the badger cow.
Okay.
I really felt, there was something I just needed to do. I can't, think that they are literally exterminating a species for no good reason. I mean, I don't think there's a
Just
good reason.
explain, just because not everybody is from these lands. So explain what the badger cull is about and why you were so active in it, or again, pro it.
So I think about now 7 years ago, the British government has decided to cull up to 70% of the population of badgers, even though the badgers are technically a protected species in England and I think in Scotland too, and Wales. They decided to cull them because they mistakenly believed that they were responsible for bovine TB. But countless amount of studies have proven that actually badgers are not responsible. I mean, they may work as a reservoir, but then so do deer, rabbit, foxes, and in fact, hounds, which
hounds,
yes. And
did you say hounds or ants?
Hounds, the dogs that go hunting.
Okay.
Hounds. And so it was a bit of a scapegoat in the badger, and we all been convinced that there are other reasons why, because of course if there is a set they cannot build, or it causes a lot of trouble. So anyway, they set up to do this, and even though a 10-year study the government paid for loads and loads of money, has confirmed that it would not only be ineffective, it could probably be counterproductive, because it would have caused what they call the dispersion effect, or the way, I can't remember exactly what was the specific, but basically the badger would flee the area,
and then spread.
That would cause the spread of the TB if any of the badger was infected, and also because their territory, it would cause a lot of perturbation. I can't remember what they called it. Anyway, their own study and their own scientists said it's not going to work, it will not work, and it's going to actually be counterproductive. But all the same, the government said, well, why not? Let's go ahead. And it was in the newspaper when one of the ministers of DEFRA, the Department of Rural Life Affairs, said, well, we need to give a carrot to the farmer. Let the badger be the carrot. So, they went ahead and they killed thousands of innocent animals. And the way they did it would be, of course, because badgers are nocturnal animals, they would go out at night, shooters, and shoot badgers. And the way they did, of course, meant that because they could never close enough to the badger, a lot of them just got wounded and then scattered and went to die after hours of agony. I mean, there were countless amount of problems, and eventually changed it was supposed to be a trial, but then I mean, you did study psychology, you have lots of trial in psychology too, and everyone that has ever done a scientific trial, no, you don't change your parameter and your rule halfway through the experiment, through the trial. But they kept changing the number, they kept changing the method, so it was all a farce. And so then it was the hunt saboteur, which, they disrupt auto hunt, that they started doing activism to disrupt the badger cow. I could not be an hunt saboteur because with the work I used to do, I needed to have a DBS, police clearance, and if I got arrested, I would lose my job. So I stayed with the badger patroller, we used to go out at night and basically patrol all the public footpath and everything. And the reason was that if we are there, the shooters cannot shoot. So by us being there, the shooter will have to break their canes and go. And similarly, if we are present when one of the badger was trapped, they cannot shoot the trapped badger. They have to let it go. So we did that for quite some time, so basically for nearly 7 years. And so, yeah, I was quite involved in that. And for me, that was part of, doing my bit. I can't do much against, pollution beside my very tiny bits. But I thought there I may actually have a direct, effect that may actually save a life. Whether it's one badger, two badger, even if it's one every night or one every week. It's one, like the story that you can save everyone, but you can save one.
That's right.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think to me that was very important because I just thought it's not fair. There is no justice in this. It's cruel. It's useless, and it's literally destroying the environment, the landscape, the wildlife. And yeah, to me that was very important, and for me it's related to my spirituality, and I'm a strong believer of put your money where your mouth is. So I thought, well, if I can do something directly, then I would.
And is that happening? That call, did it start? Did your protest work?
It's still happening. No, I think that my comfort is that we may have saved some badger, but they are still carry on. Officially, the government has said that it will be phased out within 5 years.
The badgers will be phased out, or the cull will?
No. The cull will be. They said that they're basically ending the cull, but in the small print, it said that it will be phased out gradually over 5 years. Again, by their own count, they want to exterminate 70% of the badger population in specific area.
So, I suppose this is kind of related. How do you see your responsibility, as you now are an ancestor of the future?
Well, yeah, I think that is part of the responsibility. I guess I feel, I don't have direct children, but I feel all the same responsible for what we're doing today, and not necessarily for the human race, for just the planet. So I think I was talking about this with someone a few days ago, and I said, I don't expect to be remembered beside a few people in my family when I'm gone, but if in the future, say 50, 30 years, 100, the next generation will sit and say, well, we inherited this disaster, but there was a desperate bunch of people back then that did try to do something. They did try to, stop hydraulic fracking.
Yeah.
Or they did try to stop the slaughtering of these animals, or they did try to stop whatever. And then, in a sense, they would talk about me too, because I would have been part of that, so I would have helped their way. And yeah, I think I do feel a bit of a responsibility towards the planet of, what have we done really in the future? They will think, what did they do? What will they do? And there is a thing, I think it's a meme on Facebook or something like, if you ever wonder what would you do during an invasion, or what would you do during a catastrophe, that is your moment, and I just thought, yeah, I would like to the people in the future to think that at least we tried. We may have not succeeded, or we may have succeeded in part, but at least we tried. We didn't just sit here and go, oh well, let's all go down the drain. So yeah, if they acknowledge that we tried, I think that would be good enough for me.
I suppose every generation has done damage, that we can look back and see that we're not the only ones, but I don't know, are we more aware, and, that there is an awareness of the damage that's being done. And then beside that, there's a huge lack of awareness or a lack of consciousness about it. Or for some, they don't care, or maybe they don't believe that there's a lot of destruction. So it's quite a challenge, actually, as Druids, to be, as like you say, as green as we can. I got a solar oven a few months back, and I made a cake this afternoon because there was plenty of sun. And I went to the market and I put the cake in, and I came back a few hours later and it was perfect. You know, it's just lovely to do those things. We don't always get sun here, but to be able to do something that uses whatever natural energy is that hasn't been taken out of the ground and hasn't been taken from somebody else. That, you know, if I'm using solar power and you're beside me, you're using it, it's the same power. It, you know, it's if we could do more of that, but then that comes with a cost as well. It uses fossil fuels sometimes in the making it, or needs some component that comes out of the ground. Maybe it's less than what we're doing at the moment, but who knows? But it's even having that will to make a difference or to make a change.
I think, I mean, of course, the green energy are better for the most of the normal, you know, fossil fuel and all of that. But I think something that we are really struggling to get in our heads is that we just need to consume less.
It's a hard one.
It's a hard one for everyone because we used to consume a lot. But even food-wise, even you know, clothes-wise, I mean, I had countless discussion. But especially I'm Italian, I'm supposed to be dressed well.
Actually,
But,
yeah.
but I had kind of discussion with my friend thinking, why do you need to buy all that clothes? I mean, you don't do the jet setting life that you really need all the, you know, change of wardrobe every season, I mean, besides the weather called them. And it's just people can't see that what they do is strictly, you know, is directly related to what's happening in the environment. Um, and yeah, I think really that the main thing for us would be to reduce how much we consume, and I try to use everything that's possibly recyclable, you know, beeswax wraps, and to avoid, but also try not to buy too much food, not waste food at all. I think it's blasphemy. Um, but it is quite difficult because of, I think, all our, especially Western life, is based on consumption, and we are pushed from the media, from society, from, you know, what people value these days, to get a bigger car, the bigger phone, the fancier this, the fancier that, and so it's a kind of swimming against the current to say,
Yeah,
oh, actually, you need to consume less.
Gabriella says, even if people consume less, using old solutions to old problems would lead to the same effects. New solutions are needed too.
Well, we need both.
Yeah. Anyway, if you can come up with some, Gabriella, that would be great, because sometimes it's really hard to, to deal with these things. I know as a psychologist, when I was training, it was like, you have to understand the problem fully before you can come up with a solution. So you spend all your time focusing on the problem. So that's what's wrong, the deficits, the weaknesses. And then I was introduced to a strengths-based approach, which is, it's from the strengths that you will find a solution. So it's around finding out, what are we actually good at? And can we do more of that? Or what is it that we do value? What is working? What small little thing is working? And doing more of that. Lizzie says, grow as much as you can. Yeah. Yeah. Gabrielle says, I'll make a page called My Vision of the World. Okay. Well done, Gabriella. So, how do you honor your ancestors?
How do I?
Honor your ancestors.
Well, first I try not to dishonor them, which I think is
Try not to dishonor them.
not to dishonor them, you know. Mostly because, like, my grandma and my grandfather, they were really strong. They were part of the union. They were very involved in what do you call it? But you know, the unions, so social justice and social issues. So I always try to, and I grew up with that kind of mentality. So always trying to, you know, again, do what I can, even if it's, you know, talking to people. I'm trying to keep up to date. And for the rest, I mean, on strictly my ancestors, like the close one, I know, for example, my nan, she was Christian, of course. I mean, last one, she hated the priests and the nuns and everything, so she believed in God. And she always had these things in and the Day of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
She would, when we were kids, she would bring us to the cemetery, drag us, me and all my cousins, to the cemetery. And because she had so many brothers and therefore kids and everything, we literally took the whole cemetery. We had to polish all the graves and the names and the things and put new flowers. And so we spent the whole 2 days in the cemetery, cleaning everyone else's grave, changing the flower and doing things. And then she would set up this altar in the house, which used to kind of frighten me when I was a child, with all the picture of her brothers, her moms, and her relatives that passed away, and then put all these tea lights on, not even tea lights. She would use, I never saw them here in the UK, but they're like candles. They're inside a plasticky red thing. So, and the flame is covered, is sheltered.
We have them in Ireland. They're kind of religious candles. We have them.
Yeah. They're called moccolotti. I don't know how they're called in English or they even exist in the UK. But yeah, she would put all these things all around the house, and you may wake up at night and pass by this shrine that because this light can stay on all the time, and they will gradually off. They put them in the cemetery often. You find them in the cemetery because we have light. Yeah, and you would maybe you just went to the toilet tonight and you were just things at night. They used to frighten me, but I find it kind of ironic that now when it's Halloween, I have all my altar with all my things and a picture, of course, of my granddad, and I know she would absolutely love this. And my mom doesn't do it because she said, "Oh, it kind of creeps me out." But I know she will love it, and I would have done it anyway. But I know she totally approved because so I feel I'm kind of keeping up with her tradition as well. More at like farther down ancestors, or generally than human ancestors. Again, I think I try to honor them by being responsible in the present, trying to acknowledge what they've done when they've gone wrong, and either write the things if I can, for the little I can, of course, or otherwise, learn from them. That's I think one of the important things for me about ancestors in general, not just my family and the one that I actually know, but just the people that came for us, our ancestral world, is to learn from them what they've done, what did they go wrong, or what did they do right, how dynamic of society, I think, is part of being an archaeology. You learn from history, and again, there is such a thing as knowing history, but if it's not applied, if the knowledge is not then applied and made relevant, it's just knowledge for the sake of knowledge. So I like to think, or at least I try to apply the knowledge from the past to today.
Yeah. I think it's still such a relevance. Do you have a daily practice as a druid?
I had, and then I had not. I am very bad with daily practice. I like to do it, but then life gets in the way. So I started to do it. And what I end up doing it because for a series of reasons, all my job always required that I wake up like at 2 o'clock in the morning. When I was doing field archaeology, I had to be on site at 7, and sometimes the site is 2 hours away. So I would wake up for something in the morning, and I couldn't do much more than light a candle. But then, because I was so sleepy, I worried that I would not remember to switch it off. So I tend to do my daily practice in the evening after I come back home. I had a bath, and I am in my own environment, and then I may have most of my practice would generally be lighting a candle and just kind of, I don't know what would you call it, but just acknowledge gods, the energies, whatever you want to call them, the divine in other terms. And then when I was in London, I used to then cleanse, and I know smudge is a controversial word, but when I said
You used to what? Just repeat that.
I said generally I would say smudge, but I know it's a controversial word because there is a lot of cultural appropriation.
Oh yeah.
Smudge. So when I said fumigate, my friend said, "What are you, a mosquito or a beehive that you got fumigated?" But like cleanse or science or whatever is the term, because I felt I really needed when I was in London, especially after being in the underground. So that was really much part of my daily ritual. But since I'm in Glastonbury, I don't do it very often. So I may just light an incense, light a candle, have just a few minutes of reverie.
Yeah.
And that is it.
Okay, and then you visit the tour every day.
And most of the days, yes.
Yeah, so that's like a
I mean,
pilgrimage.
I started again now because I couldn't physically manage it for the last year because of my breathing.
So it must be great after all those limitations to be able to, because for many people the tour is quite a challenge to climb. So a great achievement for you to be able to do it after so long not having been able to do it.
Well, yeah. It was very scary that I couldn't do it because it kind of gives you the measure of how unwell you are.
Yeah.
I always been able to do it, and of course, depending which of the path I take, just the steep or the long, I may have to stop at one point or two to catch my breath, pretend to do a picture. Oh no, But I just couldn't do it. Up to a few months ago, I physically couldn't do it. So now that I can, I try to go there as much as possible. However, it depends because we've been having quite a few problems here in Glastonbury with people being unruly and people camping all around the tour and on the tour within the orchard. And I felt a bit, I mean, personally, I felt a bit scared because I didn't know who these people were. And also it was very crowded, so I didn't want to go there with the crowds. But it's getting better and I'm more adventurous now.
Okay. What has been your greatest achievement? What are you most proud of?
I don't know either. I really don't know. Well, I don't know. I think, which is not really probably the most things that I'm proud of, but again, I think at the moment, having survived the lockdown, the shielding, and the COVID, and the post-COVID, and the long COVID, and still being fairly sane, I think, not that I was very sane even to begin with, but I think it was quite an achievement.
Yeah. Absolutely surviving this. Now, there's a question here from Gail. Glad you were able to climb the tour. Inspiring. Did you sense the land helping you to do this? That's an interesting question.
I don't know. I don't think I felt specifically the land helped me to do that, but I definitely felt after the shielding when I was locked in my house and I literally couldn't even go out of the door. I did try to, do grounding and things, but of course, and I have a little garden in my house, but maybe because it's made up. Sorry, maybe because it's made up ground, it just didn't have the same feel. And once I was able to go out and I could actually walk on real, natural soil, I think it just made me better. I really felt like being more connected, being re-energized. I mean, it definitely was a big, big difference. The first time I went up the tour, I kind of felt like I wanted to cry. I was exhilarated because I didn't make it. I could make it, and I was going up and go, "Oh, I'm not breathless. Oh, I'm still okay." And but I really felt the energy definitely flowing through me. So I wouldn't say necessarily they helped me as if there was an intention of them helping me or of the land helping me, but it definitely helped me because I felt reconnected and more re-energized.
That's wonderful. So would you say that's been the biggest challenge you've overcome? Or have you had another? That's a question I ask my guests. What's the biggest challenge they've overcome? Or have you had
There have been bigger challenge. I can't talk about it because
That's
there's
okay.
also a law case about it, so I can't speak about it. But yeah, there's been something that was really, really emotional, and I was extremely traumatized by it. And I had to be in therapy for quite some time, and I did not realize that I actually developed PTSD
Okay.
because of it. And so I think they're already just living with it and managing to be functional and not knowing what is going on with you. That probably is quite an achievement on its own. And then once it became obvious, it becomes obvious, someone mentioned it, and then I found, which is really serendipity, I suppose. I found this therapist, and then we went through the things, and I did a specific, I guess we call it therapy, specific for PTSD, and that helped a lot. And then things are definitely much better now. But I think living with it and not knowing that you had it, and so a lot of my reaction, was very difficult. And then you have to navigate life thinking that when I said the word normal, in brackets, but then not knowing that you have a problem. I know, in a sense, it's like when people said, I struggled all my life, and then I realized I was on the spectrum, and then everything that makes sense why they were struggling. And there was a bit like me. I realized why I was struggling so much, because I realized I had something that I didn't know I suffered from.
I think it's also testimony to your resilience and your own inner strength to continue, even with the not knowing, because not knowing why you're feeling the way you are, and experiencing like the symptoms of PTSD, it becomes your normal because you don't know any better. But the inner strength it takes to live with that, it's admirable.
Yeah, I guess you just don't know any better, so just like.
And often that is the case. You don't know any better and you still do it, but you still do it because sometimes people crash and collapse and can't do it. That to be able to give ourselves the credit for the challenges that we've overcome, and that living with something that as pain, I don't know what your details are, and I don't need to know, but that you mentioned the word trauma and PTSD, that not even having a name for that or an acknowledgement, and you still survive it, that is commendable. Gabriella says, taking responsibility for own healing is a huge achievement and a sign of self-love. It's also inspiring to hear about it. Yes, it is. So, what's the most reckless thing you've done?
I've probably done a lot of stupid things. I didn't think it was reckless at the time, but it's funny, as a few years, I don't know if it's maturity or just old age, that you realize, like, that probably was a bit reckless. I went, during my archaeology undergrad, I took up an internship for the Ministry of Culture of Egypt, which it entailed me moving to Egypt.
Okay.
And my mother was absolutely like, there is no way I was in England, so she couldn't stop me. But she was like, "This is absolutely madness. A woman alone in Egypt, it's not safe." And I was like, "Oh, what can happen to me? I'm fine." And I went there. I stayed nearly a whole year there.
Yeah.
I had my own flat. I didn't know at the time because I didn't know. I mean, I've been in Cairo many other time, and I had a couple of friends there. But I didn't know necessarily the whole of Cairo well, and I accidentally rented a place that it was miles away from where my work was,
Okay.
because the guy that found me the flat, the lady that found me the flat, thought I was working with a professor of Sun, but I was full of professor of Sun in Egypt, and I met another professor of Sun. So I ended up literally living in front of the pyramid. I'll show you the picture one day.
Ooh.
On my balcony, I could see the Great Pyramid of Giza. I just sat there and looked at the pyramid and sip tea in the evening, which it was amazing. But to go to work, I had to cross the whole of Cairo. Now, if you don't have a car, which I did, and I know you would never want to drive in Cairo anyway, even if you had a car, I had to take the service, which is the public transport. And that was quite an achievement as well. But yeah, and I stayed there and lived by myself for nearly a year in Egypt. So I think it was rather reckless when I didn't think at the time, and maybe it's a bit of naivety or a bit of, I don't know, inconscience, when but it dawned on me not too long ago. I don't know why it took so long, but thinking about, oh yeah, when I was in Egypt, blah blah blah, and I thought, oh my god, I'm not quite sure I would do it now necessarily. But at the time, I just didn't see the big deal, and I suppose Egypt at the time it was a bit of a safer place than it is now.
Yeah.
But still, I think probably for a young woman, I wasn't that young, but a woman by herself. It was a bit maybe about reckless things, but I did enjoy it, and it was a beautiful experience.
Well, the thing is, if you always live, with caution, I'm not against caution, but if it's always, well, this is too scary, I won't do it, you miss out on so much. And I suppose it's your innocence and not recognizing that there's a certain risk. And in the sense, it worked out for you. And I suppose we don't grow unless we take a risk.
Yeah, I think now I'm more aware. Maybe having lived there, I am now more aware of the risk that I could have, that the we're there, and thankfully
Yeah, yeah.
it didn't happen, but of what it could have happened. And yeah, definitely.
There is one from Gabby again. I'll just put it up here. When you were asked about your greatest achievement or achievement that you're most proud of, it was significant. I feel that you chose to talk about your personal achievement of overcoming and dealing with COVID, shielding long COVID et al. Having the pleasure of knowing you when I first heard that question, I was imagining that you might have chosen one of your many academic qualifications and studies. It was very humbling to hear that it was about your tenacity, your resilience. And I imagine you're saying inner strength there, Gabby. That's a really interesting. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, thank you, Gabby. I mean, I don't see. Okay, academic achievements are great, but maybe my academic achievements are really not achievements, are really not by my standards. Meaning, okay, I got a BA and a master and possibly a PhD, but it's like how many millions of people have it. It's not, there are hordes of students coming in and out. It's I suppose it's what you do afterwards that is important. And some people have made fantastic discovery, and
Yeah.
and then they wrote seminary books about things. I didn't do any of that, so I don't think there is any great achievement in my academic career, not at the moment at least. Yeah, so I think also again it's more difficult for me. I mean, maybe that is it. For me, it's much more difficult to deal with emotional stuff, with
Mm-hmm.
personal stuff that it is about studying. I maybe I'm fortunate that I have a good memory. I can read things. I remember them easily. Or maybe something that I like, so it doesn't really cost me a lot to study, to read, to research. I like to research. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why I didn't.
Well, I think, you know, it's great to have degrees and all of that, but in it's your own inner world and your own inner strengths that I think are really, really important. That because that's what will stand to you long after those degrees are no longer relevant. You know, you retire, you're older, or whatever it is, or you're in a new job. But that your own inner resilience, I think, is what stands to us.
Yes, definitely.
Do you have any regrets?
Plenty.
The ones you'd like to share?
Well, let's say difficult to choose. I have too many. Well, for example, I think the main theme of all my regrets is to have wasted time, waited too long, waited too long for people, waited to being too long in relationship that should have ended years before, being too long in jobs that they were not for me, or that I could have done much better. For some sense of loyalty, I just stayed in a job that it wasn't for me, or just being too long in places, just wasted time waiting for something. Or I think that's a bit of thing for me. I don't know if it's because I'm Taurus, so once I'm gone, once I takes me forever to start, but once I start, it takes me forever to stop. So once I set to do something, I have to see it to the end, even when actually you shouldn't, because it's not working, or it's not worth, or maybe while you're doing it, you realize it's not worth doing. I have these things that now I started I have to see to the end. And of course, in relationship, it's like, oh no, you can't fail. It has to work. I have to make it work. And there is not, it's good maybe in academia, or I started this, I'm going to finish that kind of discipline and drive, but it's not so good in personal life, because you need to recognize when something
That's right.
is not on. You just need to stop.
Okay.
And so I think I lost a lot of time, which I realize now, my old age, there's not coming back. And so it was really wasted.
Well, you have a lot of old age ahead of you. So, if you've got a 93-year-old granduncle and your nonna lived to be such an age, who knows? You may do the same. There's a Jules, and Jules. Do you get or still get excited with ancient archaeological discoveries that you're involved in?
Yes. The short answer is yes, absolutely. I'm always getting overly excited, in fact. And one thing that used to bother me a bit when you do commercial archaeology rather than academic archaeology, you have, sometimes you just dig in nothing, and sometimes there's this amazing site, but you can only dig the tiny parcel because that's the one that is under threat from the new Tesco development or whatever that may be. And also, unless I'm the human remains specialist, which I'm not necessarily all the time, the human remains will go to another specialist. And I'm like, oh no, these are my bones. I want to read them. I want to analyze them. I want to do the things. And because I'm not the person, if I'm not the person to analyze them, it may take years, decades before you get the result of what it is. And other times, depends on what's the project for, they do a very basic assessment, because all what they want to do is satisfy the law. So they may not go for, unless it's something really, really important, they may not go for further study. So they do just the basic assessment. And it's me then looking at all the pathology, the changes in the bones, like, oh, this could be this, we should, but I can't. So I think it's awfully frustrating.
I can well imagine. What's been the most exciting job you've done, or the most interesting?
Archaeologically wise?
Yeah, archaeologically. Yeah.
You mean like excavation?
Yeah, or whatever it is you do as an you're human remains archaeologist. So, what has been the most interesting thing you've done?
Well, there been few excavations that were really, really interesting. We worked at Bow Street, the old magistrate court in London, Bow Street, in front of the Royal Opera House. And they wanted to transform the old magistrate court where Oscar Wilde was arrested and where the Pankhursts were arrested.
Okay.
Yeah, they wanted to transform it into a hotel. I believe it's now a hotel, and he has a small museum attached where the cell used to be. I mean, it was more a node where the cell used to be. And they wanted to create an underground car park. So they had to dig the courtyard, and they have to have, of course, an archaeological excavation because there are Roman graves located in where the Royal Opera House is. So they knew that there was going to be archaeology there. And we went through a lot of layer of what he looked like a tannery shop, which was all very interesting on its own. He had all horncore stuck into this massive clay pit, and it's something to do with fixing basically making the leather pliable.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting. But right at the end, when we thought, okay, we're done, all these grave cuts, we didn't know what they were, but they look very much like grave cuts, and you cannot see a knife for it after a while.
So they look like what?
Grave cuts, like tombs in
Okay.
And so we started digging them up, and we found these two skeletons. I mean, there were there were about 8 in all, but some of them were children. And because they were stuck in clay, and they were within the water table of the Thames, so they keep getting wet and dry. The bones were pretty much nothing. The clay penetrated into the bones, so as soon as you try to lift it, they would just crumble into nothing. But there were these two skeletons laid perfectly side by side, 2 girls of the same age, still wearing their beads necklace, their rings in their finger, their griddle back by their side. They just looked perfect, and clearly they were undisturbed. So it was exactly like the day they were buried, and it was pretty amazing. I never saw such a perfect burial, and they still had the whole string of beads, glass beads, red, white, and green, and they have silver rings in their fingers. They had exactly the same jewelry. They were buried exactly the same.
Wow.
And they had the same age. So I don't know, because they, of course, didn't do DNA analysis, but we liked to think that they were related, maybe sister or twins even, or something, because they clearly that it wasn't a chance that they got buried with exactly the same jewelry and exactly the same thing. They had, well, the griddle bag was no longer there, but the contents of some of the contents of the griddle bag was still there. Griddle bag is just like a
they wear it on their waist. Yeah.
And they had the pins like what do you call it? Needle, bone needle, a comb. They had extra beads from their jewelry. So, and then they had just normal pins from their clothes, and there was some brooch, shield brooch, I think they're called, with the enamel was still visible. It was amazing. And I got to dig up the bones. Unfortunately, I said that the skeleton was very badly preserved. But while I was cleaning it, I found a dice and a coin. No, it wasn't a coin, there was another one. A dice in the mouth of one of the girls, which of course it was not placed in the mouth. It just went there through taphonomic processes, animal borrowing and just soil it. But it must have been around there somewhere. But somehow it ended up in her mouth. And yes, actually, and she had a coin. Also end up in her, somewhere up in her cranium.
It's fascinating. How old were they dated?
Well, they managed to do radiocarbon 14, I think, and they were early Saxon, which is really rare. We don't have many graves from early Saxon, so it was really interesting. And when I had to give some suggestion of what further study we could do, because of the poor preservation of the bones, there was not much possible to do. Oh, sorry, I'm lying. They didn't do carbon 14 to the bones because they were just not possible. They could have took the teeth And that was my advice. I said you could try to get some sample from teeth because they had both of them had a full set of teeth. And usually we don't take the teeth if the correspondence is not present, just for analytical studies, for analytical reasons. But they had a full set of teeth. And from the coins, they could, and the jewelry, they could date what period they were.
There's a question Gail has. When you find an ancient archaeology discovery, do you ever hear from the spirits?
Okay, considering that I've worked in the British Museum, where we have the largest collection of human remains in the whole of the UK, and often it's just in the lab, all dead. Me, like my professor said, you're the only one still breathing. With the minority still breathing. I never felt anything from the skeletons of the mummies, which I personally liked to know. However, there was a very random skeletal remains that I got given to analyze from one of the commercial units, and it was a lady, and I wasn't at the excavation site. They just gave me the bones in the lab. But from the thing, she was buried in some weird house with a leg sticking up. Now, my conviction was that it's been moved. It looked like the position was dead, either by taphonomic processes or while the digger, the bucket pulled it up, he kind of moved it and then it looked like. But I wasn't on the side, so I can't say. But there was something about the lady. It was a woman. I said the lady, and technically, professionally, I'm not supposed to call her a lady. I'm not supposed to call her anything but SK 5532. But I know she was a woman, so I always call her the lady. She stayed under my desk. I mean, her skeleton, of course, stayed under my desk, and it bugged me. There was something about. I could just feel her presence, and there was something I could not tell what, but there was something unsettled about it, and I think that is the closest I ever felt about a skeleton. That there was something unsettled, and I just couldn't tell what it was. I mean, there's enough for me to tell why she died, how she died. She was in a proper grave cut, but the position that she was buried was rather weird. So I don't know whether she had been thrown in, if her body had been thrown in, and I said I wasn't there, and the way unfortunately the excavation was recorded was really poor. So there was no way for me to know exactly what happened, the peri-mortem situation. But there was probably one of the few that I really thought there was something up with their skeleton or something unsettled with it. And the other one, it was more me being sorry, but again, it gave me a real, I don't know whether it was the skeleton itself giving that vibe or if it was my psychology, because what happened was, it was again from a commercial excavation. This skeleton had been found within other female skeleton, and I can't even remember where the site was, but it was not in Britain. Basically, what happened is she was buried in a plot where all women that died peri-partum, either while they were giving birth or pregnant or after giving birth, were buried. Can you hear me?
Why, she was buried in a plot or a pot?
Plot. A plot of land, a part of the cemetery. Again, I wasn't at the excavation site, so this is all what I read from the report. That this area where her body was found, she was buried within another 2 pregnant women. So the 2 skeletons next to her, they were all pregnant, and you could tell because, of course, the rib cage is above the little bones of the baby. They still within the womb.
Okay.
But she was not pregnant. But she had this absolutely massive 2.5 kilos fibron, which ossified. So it looked like a giant egg, bigger than an ostrich egg, and it was lodged clearly within her pelvis. but it was it possibly was just an ossified fibroma. So she had a fibroid, and he eventually ossified. We thought it could have been cancer, or possibly some form of cancer. Other times, when something like this happens, is because the fetus has died within the womb, and the body reacts by creating this shell around it to contain the possible infection and you know. And so we actually sectioned this massive lump of calcium to see whether there was a fetus or something to tell us. But inside there was this very ray-like a firework-like shapes. So that's more likely that there was some form of cancer or ossified fibromas, something like that. Again, they didn't do further analysis, so I can't really tell. But these things had also the shape of her pelvic bones where he was leaning against. So what we extrapolated from this situation is that the person was buried within where the other pregnant women were buried because they thought she was pregnant. And then I realized she was not pregnant. She just had this massive tumor of cancerous growth. And it was very sad because also she looked originally, they said, well, she's very old, so they kind of thought she was pregnant because clearly look at her bones, they're really brittle osteoporotic, so she must have teeth, and she had no teeth. But I think, and my supervisor agreed with me on the case, that she was not old, she was probably young, but to create that monster, that 2.5 kilos of calcium, the calcium was sucked and leached from her bones.
From her bones, yeah.
Which then makes the whole of her skeleton to look much, much brittle and old. And I found that it was terrible, terrible, terribly sad for me because I thought, just think when this person was alive, she probably was joyous at first. She thought she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And they shared it with other pregnant women, and it wasn't. It was something horrid that actually. I mean, I can't say if that's what killed her. It is possible, but whatever it was, it was not a baby that she was growing, and I just thought it was terribly sad. But again, it wasn't necessary because the skeleton was giving sad vibes. I think it was more me being affected by the situation, while the other one was definitely something that I felt was coming from the bones. For the rest, I'm sad to report that even though there are lots of stories about ghosts and sighting in the British Museum, in all my years working there, I didn't see it.
Okay. There's a question from Ricky here. With your archaeology hat on, what do you think of UNESCO suggesting that Stonehenge may be for inscription in the World Heritage in danger list unless significant changes to planned government renovations occur?
I thought the UNESCO was actually suggesting to remove Stonehenge from the World Heritage site if the tunnel goes ahead. That was the last I heard. But yeah, I mean, if they put it on a dangerous, endangered list, I think they are probably right. I think what people sometimes get confused is the stones per se, that they are not at risk. The tunnel is not going anywhere close to the stone. The stone are actually set in concrete blocks, so they are not going to fall off or break. But when they talk about Stonehenge, it's intended as the wider landscape, the whole archaeological area, which spans several kilometers. And there are countless amounts of burial mound, inhumations, cremations. There are activity areas. I mean, there is so much stuff there. I find it absolutely bewildering that the government is planning to go ahead with the tunnel. And I think another thing that sometimes is confused. The tunnel is the actual main body of the tunnel is not going to really touch the archaeology because it's going to go so down that is below, the archaeological level. But of course, the part where the map of the tunnel is and the other part, the exit, that will be absolutely crushed. And these are very wide area because you don't just go boom inside the tunnel. You need to create a ramp to go down. So we're talking about a very, very large area that is going to be trashed. And I think it's crazy. I can't believe, why they would do it. But then again, I can't understand for, the love of me why English heritage would ever go along with it for National Trust. We want to go along with it, but that I know, because that is going to make the stones not visible from the road. So now, I don't know if you've been there, but if you take the A303, you literally pass by the stones and you can see them.
It's lovely. Yeah.
Once this tunnel takes place and the mounds, because that's another weird thing, they want to create a kind of hill over the mounds. So if they get that way, and that's what's going to happen, you won't be able to see the stones from nowhere unless you pay the £19 to English Heritage to go and see the stone. And I think that's why they want it, because so people cannot go, oh, I can see them from outside and I need to pay the ticket. Because there would be no possibility for anyone to see the stones from outside. And therefore, if you want to see them, even, for people, like sometimes they say, well, I've been there, I'm happy to see them from outside. You won't no longer be able to do that. And I mean, the reason given by the English Heritage said, oh, there's all these stinky, smelly, and noisy roads. Oh my God. I mean, it's like that is our biggest problem, the stinky, smelly roads. It just sounds like some sort of privileged person, getting their nose upon the stinky road. We'll have to just destroy the archaeological site because we can't do with the stinky road. It sounds a bit preposterous to me. So I think, yes, it definitely needs to be added to the endangered list, and possibly shouldn't be added because it shouldn't be dug. The tunnel should not, be done. And if really has to take place, they should do it much longer, that the entrance and exit are outside the archaeological area.
Okay.
Is
there not also a danger that Neolithic artifacts not yet discovered might be lost in the works?
Definitely, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I know who's doing the excavation there. I mean, the commercial unit that's doing the excavations, Wessex Archaeology. And this is my personal opinion. I don't believe that unless you do 100% sampling, which is impossible on a site like this, because basically you spend the next 30 years doing the excavation, then you are going to lose thousands and thousands of artifacts, because even if you do 30%, 40%, 70%, it's still going to lose thousands of artifacts. So my hope is that, because they already started doing some of the archaeological work and they found a burial and so had to stop, my hope is that it's going to happen exactly what happened usually in my hometown, Rome. That they want to do some fantastic development, they start digging, they find a full Roman villa, takes forever to dig them up, so they lose the will to do whatever development they wanted to do, pack up their things and leave it. And so I hope that that's what's going to happen in Stone Age. They're going to start it, then realize, look, it's going to take forever and a day to do this, let's share it. So that's my hope.
Okay, Julia Foyle says, passing Stonehenge on my way to and from my grandparents in Cornwall, every holiday played a huge part in influencing my later path. Such a shame if future generations don't get to experience it too. So you have, yeah.
And I think it's a view that anyone that's, been in England or lives in England, it's a view, it's what it's always been, and it's a kind of thing. I mark where I am when I used to travel from Glastonbury to London. I knew exactly how long, it was a way marker. Oh, I'm in Stonehenge, so I know exactly how much it is. And it's something that breaks your trip, because even though there's always traffic, so fair enough, you're probably stuck there for a while. You see the stone, you see the people. I don't know. It entertains me.
Absolutely. There's another one. This is from Jan Longhurst. Valentina, do you subscribe to the theory that there was no large Anglo-Saxon invasion, and that those of us that think our ancestors were such actually are not?
In one way, there was not a large Anglo-Saxon invasion. I mean, the Anglo-Saxon was definitely in England.
Okay, so you don't subscribe to that theory then, that there was none. Except
No,
that,
I'm not. No, I mean, it is a given that Anglo-Saxons did came here, and we have their cultural material, we have their writings, and it's not a doubt that they came here, and England is called England under the Anglo. So I don't know, maybe if there is some discussion or argument between scholars about the size of the invasion that I wouldn't know. It's not my field. But I
yeah.
don't think it's in doubt that the Anglo-Saxon were here, and yeah.
Well, Linda Joan, who's just tuned in from Australia, which is at some unearthly hour, she says we need more passionate warriors like Valentina, which is really nice. And there's a lovely comment from Floriana. You know Floriana Rubino. I think Valentina has wasted no time in the sense that every experience has given her depth, humbleness, and a wonderful sense of humour. Qualities that Druidry encourages to develop. I could talk with her for hours and always have a good laugh, as well as deep insight and good tips for when I went to Egypt.
Florian is one of the people that during the lockdown we had dinner together. I'll be having my dinner on Zoom or WhatsApp, and she will have her dinner, and we cook lots of dinner together while you're cooking and doing this.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, what are you grateful for?
Well, lots of things. I'm grateful for my health, my regained health as well, and I think again, having been unwell, possibly. I mean, I was born with some problem, but I was young and I don't remember any of it. But this has probably been the biggest actual condition, illness that I ever had. And it was kind of frightening because they couldn't really work out what it was, since they didn't think it was what everyone else is talking about now, COVID. and then suddenly not being able to do things that I used to do, or fearing to go out, because even after they said, oh, well, shielding is over, you can go out, I was thinking, well, we'll go out, and what if I start to be breathless and pass out, and there is no one, and how it's going to work if I feel ill. And so again, because in one of the many things they thought this, they had some allergic asthma. I love to go, in the field and walking and going up the tour. And of course, I live so close to the Abbey. We have trees everywhere. And they did say at one point their doctor version is that I had allergic asthma. And so I was terrorized of going out and thinking, what if I have an asthma attack while I go out? What if I have an asthma attack while I walk up the hill, or in the in the Abbey, because it's full of tree, and they still didn't send me to the immunologist, so I didn't know to what I was, allegedly allergic. So it was very distressing, because basically it meant I could not do my normal life. I feared to go out. I physically could not manage to work of any length. You can't breathe, and if you can't breathe, no matter the doctor, you need to stay calm. Well, have you ever tried staying calm when you're suffocating? It's right. Not easy. Exactly. So it was very scary. So having now know what it was, and it's been much better, I definitely am very thankful for my health. I'm thankful for my family, because they've been, talking to me every day. My mother said, oh, I'm going to come over. And I was like, Mom, you can't legally, you are not allowed. But, knowing my mother, fit daughter of my grandmother, she probably would have literally swim the channel and would have come, So, yeah, definitely I'm grateful for my family, for my friends that have been helping me a lot. I'm grateful for living in Glastonbury. I think I would have had a very different experience if I was still in London.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if it's Glastonbury, if it's because allegedly, according to local law, my house is bang on the in Long's Edge, where the Michael line and Mary line met, or something on their line. So I feel really, really peaceful, very grounded here, very, again, all through that and all having to be locked in the house, I think if that happened in London, I would have possibly have gone probably out of my mind, or have been way worse. But I don't know, it's something about this place and the energy there in this place that helped me to stay very grounded, very, very calm. So yes, I'm definitely thankful for that. Sounds like I'm a ghost. I don't know how I want to think this, but I'm really grateful for the view that I had outside, for
Wonderful, yes.
nature, for the trees, for everything, because they really, really helped me. I spent long time actually looking at the lamps. I had lamps touching around behind my kitchen, and I just, when I couldn't go out, I just look at them, what they were doing and running around and things.
Wonderful.
Yes,
What brings you joy, Valentina?
the lamps. I really, it makes me happy to see the animals, to
Yeah.
stay outside, being in nature, being in the woods. That's why it was very distressful when I thought I couldn't. I keep thinking, I'm a druid. How can I possibly be allergic to trees? This cannot be. This is wrong at so many levels. And but yeah, I think I'm the happiest when I'm outside. I love looking at animals, any animals. I'm just an animal person. I love dogs, but I'm very much, I look at the bird. I start to talk to the birds, and they also give you a. I don't know if I can explain myself, but they give you kind of wider view. All through this pandemic and things, and everyone. I mean, humans. We're like, oh, it's the end of the world. This tragedy happened, and you realize it's only humans. The rest of the planet is going absolutely on its own business as business
Yeah.
as usual. The birds are doing still their things, the trees are still blooming. It's not the end of the world. It's a period that we humans need to, restrict our action, restrict our social life, but it's really not coming to an end. The world is not coming to an end. And so again, it kind of grounds you and it gives you perspective, and it gives a much bigger picture and also a sense of serenity, because what to say, it's also a reference point.
Mm-hmm.
The birds, is not the end of the world. The birds are still going. The sun is still rising and setting. Everything is still fine. It's not this drama. I mean, a lot of people died and it's a drama, but it's a human situation. It's not the wider world, and so it kind of give you some fixed point, something that you can grasp and you can hold it to when everything else needs to go around. Um, Children, babies, make me happy, and I know this is gonna sound very wrong, but I do associate babies with animals, not because they look like animals, but because they have the same kind of innocence.
Yes.
They don't have that malice. They don't have preconception. They don't have nastiness. They don't stay there wondering, oh, did he this or did he do that or did he they have that innocence, and so that they give you the very of the Ruby that Jude's dogs.
I take it the licks are coming from dogs.
Dogs, yeah, that's Ovin Ruby that Jude's dogs that cute. And so yes, that makes me happy, because also they always have that very nice vibe about them, and then they're so full of life, and again there is no maliciousness in them. So that
That's
definitely
right.
makes me happy.
That was beautiful.
Food makes me happy.
Oh, wonderful. One concern you have about the modern world?
What concerns me, it's human society. Humans. Again, it's like, where are we going? What are we doing? And I know lots of people, we're very positivistic, optimistic. During the pandemic, they were like, oh, we see people are changed, the nature is having a breath of life, and it's like suddenly everyone discovered nature and all of that. But the moment they called the lockdown off, everyone was exactly as they were before. All their philosophical attitude gone out the window. And actually, we had some really bad events in Somerset, in Cornwall, where people trashed nature reserve, where people, attacked a lot of animals. As once, for example, we kicked a cygnet was killed in Richmond Park.
Oh,
There seems to have been a spike of actual violence against animals and just vandalism. I read just not too long ago, I think Eleanor posted it on the OBOD page, that tourists wanting to go out of the crowd went to Wisman Woods and Wisman Woods?
no.
It's oak woodland, but it's the highest oak woodland in the England, at least, probably not Scotland, but England. And it's a very ancient woodland. It's in Dartmoor, so there is Dorset, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all the trees are covered in moss. They look like a beard. I mean, if
Okay.
you Google it, it's beautiful. It's a magical place, but it's a very tiny woodland. And what happened? A lot of people started to go there and take a piece of moss and lichens off the trees, climbing on the trees, and most of the trees are so rickety and all
Yeah.
bendy that broke branches and basically nearly destroyed Wisman Wood. And now I think it's Natural England has blocked access to the woodland because they're hoping to, regenerate it because it's literally dying. Because human have decided that because I can't go to the stadium or to the club, I'm just gonna go and destroy it. And I don't think they thought they were destroying it. They probably thought I'm a souvenir. But that's what I find a bit worrying. That even good intentioned people seems to be so unaware.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
they think to do good and actually do damage. And it's the same like when it was 3 years ago now, Gog and Magog, the millennial
Yes.
old folks. Well, Gog was already dead, but some clever sparks has put a tea light in his trunk. And of course, the trunk took fire, and it took 3 days to stop
Yes.
the flame. And again, I'm sure it was a devotional gesture and it was a good intention gesture, but who on earth thinks to put a tea light next to dry wood? But again, people camping up the tor, completely eroding the soil, putting torch under trees, putting campfire in places they shouldn't be in. So it's like, okay, human may have rediscovered nature, but again, you're damaging it.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, maybe it was better when you didn't discover it and you stayed in the city. So it concerns me that we have this attitude still. I know, I think there's part of the population is much more aware, but I don't think we reach critical mass yet, and there are
Yeah.
large swaths of the population which still are not aware. And they have this attitude that is quite arrogant. I go and go and conquer. I go there, I take this. I
Yeah.
go there and I do that. I go there and take the little animal and take a selfie with it. It's just like the world is my oyster and I do what I want.
Yeah.
And I find that terribly troubling. And of course, also the violence that we do against each other. Um, I never heard when I was growing up. I never heard of bullying, but now everyone that's a child at school is aware of bullying. The children bullying each other. Um, Again, I don't understand when probably always happens, but I don't understand when children. When it was recently, it said children have kicked the hedgehog they used a hedgehog as a football and killed him, of course. And I'm just like, at what level of disconnection why would a child do something like that? It would never occur to me, even when I was a child and I knew nothing else. It's just why is there this aggressiveness in the world? Why are we creating a society that it's hungry, it's upset, it's frustrated, it's lashing out right, left, and center? So that it worries me, and I don't really know what I can personally do very little about it. But
It
it's
is
definitely a concern.
absolutely. So, with all of those concerns, what gives you hope for the modern world?
The small part that I was mentioning before, that is more aware. Uh, I think there is a shift, and it's very heartening to see, for example, people like Greta Thunberg.
Mhm.
Um, she has mobilized quite a big crowd, and I think overall people are starting to get much more aware. Again, how aware and aware of what, it's all a different matter. But I think things are starting to move in the right direction. I don't know how long it's going to take before it's a critical mass and therefore they become the mainstream. Because of course we are against, a whole establishment that pushes backward in a sense because they affect their income and their wealth. But I think there are large parts of a sizable part of the population who is, changing views, and you hear always more people trying to eat ethically for as much as they can. They're trying to, be greener, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that gives me hope. And all of the people say children give them hope. They give me hope in the sense that we know there will be a next generation, but I think for the children to be the hope, the parents need to grow them with awareness. So yeah, I think that does give me hope to see that there is a change, for as much as still small, but that there is a change.
Okay. So, what will you not compromise on? What for you is not negotiable?
Um, what would be the right words for it? But um, um, I don't know. I can't come up now with the right word. But basically, what is non-negotiable for me is, for example, human rights.
Yep.
Equality is non-negotiable, and
Mhm.
again, there is not for me a middle ground with certain political point of view. In fact, I don't even think that political, more ideological point of view. I cannot, I don't, I cannot find a middle ground with it. There are things that they are just wrong, and I won't accept them, and I will not entertain them
Yeah.
as an acceptable point of view. Um, and it's the same with discrimination.
Yeah.
Um, I if you black, white, or pink, I don't think it's not compromise to me. Racism is not a thing that would ever compromise you. That there are no buts or maybe or excuses or
Mhm.
what to say. Yeah, there are things that can't compromise.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've come to the end of our conversation. So the last question I ask my guests, I suppose there's two parts to this. What's your favorite time of the year? And what is your favorite of the Eightfold festivals?
What's favorite time of the year? Spring,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely spring. And was my favorite festival? Well, I have two. I like Lamas or
Mm-hmm.
Lunasa
Unisa, yeah.
because it's something to do with the harvest, and it's really nice, and it's the high of summer. Of course, there's a bit of sadness because it's the high of summer. That means it's going to start raining, but it's the hottest time of the year, and I'm a hot country creature. I like it hot. Well, everyone else 2 weeks ago we complaining because it was 27 degrees. I was like, yeah, finally, I'm fine. I'm still sleeping with a duvet. Everyone laughed, but I'm still sleeping with a winter duvet even though it's 25 degrees.
Wow.
The other is Samhain
Yeah.
because again I feel very close to my ancestors, and it's a special time of the year, and it's one of the ones that I can really feel the shifting, the difference. So yeah, it's definitely.
And the majority of people, of my guests so far, prefer Samhain. It's a
Yeah.
really interesting, yes, it really is. It's a fascinating one. Valentina, it's been such a joy talking to you and listening to you, and judging by the interest from our viewers, they too were fascinated with what you had to say. So we will. So don't go. I'm just going to say goodbye, but we will look at the. We will read your comments as well. So I'm going to say thank you so much, Valentina, and I look forward to you taking me to the Avalon marshes. So whenever that will be. So who knows? Who knows? So anyway, so I will say goodbye to you, but hang on there, okay? And I'll say goodbye to. Oh, I'm getting a bit throaty. So thank you all for joining me this evening, and for your wonderful comments and how you engage in the conversation with Valentina. It's been such a joy when people actually get engaged, and that helps the conversation along. So I look forward to seeing you next week, where I will have another guest. And thank you so much for being here. And so I wish you a good evening or a good morning or a good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. So until I see you next week, slán go fóill.